Hey there. Tonight, we begin not with a journey, but with its absolute opposite. We plant our feet in the mud. This is the story of the ones who stay behind. The ones who build the arks, but never see the flood. It's a story of cold that becomes a part of your bones, of splinters that work their way under your skin and into your soul, and of a slow, deafening dialogue between man, tree, and sea. You won't find mermaids or krakens here, just the raw geometry of survival, the smell of fear made manifest in tar, and the quiet, terrible pride of creating something that must outlive you. If this kind of slow, foundational storytelling helps you steady your own keel, feel free to like the video and subscribe, but only if it truly becomes a harbor for your thoughts. And let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what the hour is. It's a quiet pact, knowing who else is building something in the dark tonight. So, lower the lights. Let the world outside fade. We're going down to the river. Settle in. Let's begin with the mud. You are 12 years old, and the river gives you nothing. It took your mother to the fever 3 winters back, her cough mixing with the sound of rain on the thatch until both stopped. Now, it seems it will take you, not to drown you, but to drown your childhood in its gray, unfeeling labor. Your father is a wherryman, his back bent from 20 years of hauling goods and people across the wide, brown estuary. His boat, the Pilgrim, is a part of him, a thing of patched planks and stubborn pride. But you're too light for the oars, too clumsy with the pole. You are ballast, and poor ballast at that. You see the calculation in his eyes each morning, a silent tally of mouths to feed against the ache in his joints. The calculation has been running against you for a year. The decision is not spoken. It is a silence that grows over the supper of pea broth and hard bread. It is the way he looks past you, up the river, towards where the forest of masts and the skeleton ribs of the shipyard break the skyline. One evening, as you mend a fishing net with fingers still learning the knots, he speaks to the fire, not to you. Master Elias at the yard. He took on Lou's boy, got him bed and board, teaches him a trade. He pokes the ember. A trade is a stone in your shoe. It hurts, but it keeps you from floating away. You say nothing. The net in your hands feels like a web you are tangled in. I'll speak to him at the tide tomorrow, your father says, and that is the end of your life on the water. You are to be given to the land, to the place where water is an enemy to be outwitted, not a road to be traveled. The walk upriver the next morning is a funeral procession of 2. The sounds of the waking port, the cries of fishmongers, the clang of a smithy, the creak of ropes, fade behind you, replaced by a deeper, more profound noise. It starts as a hum, then a rumble, then a cacophony as you round the bend. The shipyard is not a single place. It is a cancerous growth on the riverbank, a sprawling, muddy chaos of activity. Shelters of canvas and rough wood groan under piles of timber. Great logs float tethered in the brackish water like captured beasts. The air is a solid thing. It is the sweet, clean sweat of freshly split pine. It is the eye-watering, throat-clenching stench of boiling tar, a black smoke that stains the very sky. It is the rotten, sweet-sour smell of the river mud itself, of things buried and forgotten. And under it all, the smell of men and their work, sour ale, old sweat, and the iron tang of fear. Your father finds Master Elias not in an office, but standing knee-deep in a pit of muddy water, he and another man wrestling with a curved piece of oak the size of a horse. Elias is not a large man, but he is dense, like heartwood. His clothes are a uniform of brown and black, his forearms corded and gleaming with wet and effort. He doesn't look up as your father approaches, just barks a command, and the timber is levered into place. Only when the task is done does he climb from the pit, water streaming from him. His eyes, the color of flint on a wet day, pass over your father and settle on you. They are not unkind. They are assessing. They are the eyes of a man who looks at a piece of wood and sees not a tree, but a potential keel, a beam, or firewood. This the boy. His voice is a dry rasp, worn smooth by shouting over saws and wind. Your father nods, nudging you forward. Strong for his age, quiet, can follow an order. Elias's hand shoots out, gripping your shoulder, turning you toward the weak morning light. His fingers are like iron bolts. He squeezes the muscle, runs a thumb over your collarbone. He is feeling for grain, for shakes, for the hidden weakness. He looks at your hands, soft, unscarred, and his mouth tightens almost imperceptibly. He'll start as a sweeper, Elias declares, releasing you as if you were a tool he'd judged serviceable. Bed in the spar loft. Food with the yard boys. He gets a wage when he's worth one. He names a sum so small it's an insult. Your father doesn't flinch. He nods, grips your shoulder once, a brief, hard pressure, and then turns and walks away, back down the river path. He does not look back. You stand there, abandoned to the noise and the stink. The world has narrowed to this muddy kingdom, and you are its lowest subject. Master Elias points a tar-blackened finger towards a vast, open-sided shed where two men are driving a pit saw through a massive log. Sawdust, he says, keep the pit clear. Don't get in the way. And then he is gone, back to the world of important things. Your kingdom is dust. The saw pit is a place of terrifying, beautiful violence. The log is mounted high. Above, the topsawyer, a giant of a man named Garrett, guides the great two-man saw. Below, in the pit itself, shrouded in a perpetual blizzard of wood, is the pit man, a stoic ghost named Reese. Garrett pulls the saw up, Reese pulls it down, and with each stroke, a screaming torrent of golden sawdust pours into the pit. Your job is to shovel it out, to keep Reese from being buried alive. The dust is fine and choking. It coats your tongue, fills your nostrils, sticks to your sweat. Within an hour, you are a gilded statue, blinking yellow tears. The rhythm of the saw is hypnotic and brutal. The screech of steel on wood, the grunt of the men, the thud of your shovel. You learn the first rule of the yard: be invisible. You're a part of the scenery, like a pile of shavings or a bucket of nails. You are noticed only when you fail, when you let the dust mound too high, when you trip carrying a bucket of water for the saw blade dip, when your exhaustion makes you slow. The days are an eternity of aching monotony. Your body rebels in a chorus of pains you never knew existed. A deep, hot fire burns in the muscles of your back from shoveling. Your palms blister, then callous, then blister again on top of the calluses. The damp cold of the riverbank, even in late spring, seeps into your marrow. You sleep in the spar loft, a long, drafty attic above the shed where finished masts are stored. Your bed is a sack of stale straw shared with lice and the whispers of other boys. Tom, the peg carrier, and Will, the blacksmith striker. They are hollow-eyed, sharp-elbowed creatures, veterans of this war of attrition. They teach you the second rule through withheld bread or a foot shoved out to trip you. There is no brotherhood here. Only competition for the slightest advantage, for a less rotten piece of fish, for a spot farther from the draft. You're always hungry. The yard food is a gray, nameless gruel, a hunk of hard bread, a piece of salt fish so tough you could sole a shoe with it. You learn to eat fast, to guard your bowl with your arms, to scavenge for discarded apple cores or rinds near the master's house. Hunger becomes a constant companion, a hollow space inside you that echoes with the screech of the saws. Weeks pass. You become proficient at being a ghost. You learn the rhythms of the yard, the furious activity of the early morning, the slower, heavier labor of the afternoon, the eerie quiet that falls when the light fails, broken only by the watchman's cough and the lap of the tide. You begin to see patterns in the chaos. You learn that the sweet-smelling pine is for decking and cabins, but the bitter, iron-scented oak is for the bones, the keel, the frames, the parts that must bear the sea's wrath. You see the steam box, a long, coffin-like tube where planks are softened by steam until they are pliable as leather, then bent around forms to make the impossible curves of the hull. You watch the joiners, artists in wood, cutting complex locks and tabs into timbers so that they fit together without a single nail, held by the sheer genius of their shape and the loyalty of the wood. One afternoon, shoveling mindlessly, you pause to watch old Torvald, the master framer, at work. He is shaping a futtock, a ribbed timber, with an adze. He is not a young man, but each swing of the tool is economical, perfect. The blade bites, and a long, curling chip flies away, as thin and precise as a parchment scroll. He isn't fighting the wood. He is having a conversation with it. He listens to the sound of the strike, feels the resistance, and answers with the next swing. You stand, transfixed, shovel forgotten. A shadow falls over you. It's Garrett, the topsawyer, his face a mask of yellow dust. Seen a vision, boy, he grunts, not unkindly. He makes it look easy, you stammer, pointing at Torvald. Garrett spits a stream of brown tobacco juice into the sawdust. Easy? That's 50 years in his arms. 50 years of listening. That adze is part of his hand. You think we're just cutting up trees here? He gestures broadly at the roaring, stinking, glorious chaos of the yard. We're arguing with God, boy. We're taking his trees and telling him we can make something that'll last on his sea. It's a cheeky business, and it takes every bit of cheek you've got. He walks back to his saw. You look down at your own hands, blistered and dirty. For the first time, the ache in them feels like it might mean something more than just pain. It feels like the beginning of an argument. Summer in the shipyard is not warmth. It is a thick, sticky heat mixed with dust that turns to mud on sweaty skin. You have passed through the spring rains and the squelching mud. Now comes the dust. Sawdust, sanding dust, dust that hangs in the air in a slow, golden haze in the sunbeams piercing the shed's gaps. You have been sweeping for 3 months. Your shoulders have learned the pendulum swing of the broom. Your eyes have learned to see the flow of debris like a current. You have become an efficient ghost. The promotion comes not with a word, but with a gesture. Old Torvald is fitting a complex joint, a hooding end where a stern timber meets the transom. He needs a holding wedge. His regular peg boy, Tom, is nowhere to be seen, likely sneaking a nap at a pile of hay. Torvald, without looking up from his delicate work, snaps his fingers impatiently and points a thick finger at a block of off-cut oak. He makes a sharp, chopping motion with his hand. A wedge. Now, you don't run. You have learned that running draws attention, and attention is often the precursor to a cuff. You move quickly, snatch up the block, and go to the tool bench. You've watched this done 1,000 times. You select a broad, sharp chisel and a heavy mallet. You set the block on its end, place the chisel's edge at an angle, and strike. The blow is awkward. The chisel skids, taking a ragged chunk from the side. Your heart sinks. You reposition, focus. Imagine the line Torvald would draw with his eye. You strike again. A clean, angled slice shears off. 2 more strikes, and you have a crude but serviceable wedge. You carry it over. Torvald takes it without looking, taps it into place with his own small bossing mallet, gives it a final tap, and grunts. It is not a thank you. It is an acknowledgement of a need fulfilled. He works for another minute, then pauses, squinting at the joint. He pulls the wedge out, examines its rough facets, and then, for the first time, looks directly at you. His eyes are pale blue, washed out like a winter sky. You cut this. You nod, bracing for scorn. Thick ends weak. Will split under pressure. He tosses it into the shavings at his feet. Then he points to the tool bench. Bring the block and the draw knife. This is it, the end of the broom. You fetch the items. Torvald leads you to a low, solid bench called a shaving horse, a contraption with a foot-operated clamp to hold the wood. He sits you on it, puts the oak block in the clamp, and shows you how to work the pedal with your foot, securing the timber. He places the draw knife in your hands. It is heavier than it looks, a curved blade with 2 wooden handles. Your hands, familiar with the broom's grain, feel alien around it. Your arms are the pull. Your body is the anchor. You don't fight the grain. You ask it to leave. His own hands, vast and scarred, envelop yours. He guides your first pull. The blade bites, catches, and rips a ugly, torn gash in the wood. You ask with a shout, ask with a whisper. He adjusts the angle of the blade ever so slightly. Listen, you pull again. This time, the blade slides, then catches, producing a rough curl. An improvement. Again, you pull and pull. For an hour, you do nothing but make kindling from offcuts. Your world reduced to the connection between blade, wood, and the burning protest in your shoulders and back. The dust here is different. Not fine powder, but thick, fragrant curls that pile around your feet. You learn the language of resistance. A tugging, fibrous pull means you're against the grain. A smooth, almost singing slide means you found it. The perfect cut produces a long, continuous ribbon, thin enough to see light through, coiling on the ground like a wooden serpent. You're not making anything useful. You're learning to speak. The draw knife teaches you humility. It exposes your impatience, your weakness, your frustration in every ragged shaving. Torvald says little. He watches, occasionally nudging your elbow or pointing at a better angle on the wood. His silence is a greater teacher than any lecture. It says, the knowledge is in the doing. Find it. After a week of this, he gives you a purpose. A stack of rough-sawn oak planks, destined to be sealing. The inner skin of the ship's hull needs their edges jointed true. He hands you a jack plane, a smaller, more manageable cousin of the massive joiner planes. Make them straight. Make them square. A gap you can see is a river waiting to happen. The plane is a revelation. It is a thing of controlled, delicate violence. You learn to set the blade, a iron, so it protrudes a hair's breadth. Too much, and it digs a trench. Too little, and it merely dusts the surface. You learn the stance. Feet planted, body leaning into the push, a long, smooth stroke that runs the full length of the plank. The sound is a crisp, satisfying shhk, and in its wake, the rough, splintered wood is transformed into a smooth, blonde surface gleaming with latent potential. You become obsessed with truth. You check your work with a winding stick, a simple straight edge. You hold along the plank, sighting down its length, looking for the faintest curve, the slightest bow. The sea will find that curve. The sea will exploit that bow. You plane and check, plane and check. Your hands begin to understand flatness, not as an idea, but as a feeling. Your fingertips, running over the plane's surface, can detect a dip thinner than a fingernail. One afternoon, working on a stubborn plank that refuses to be true, you grow frustrated. You set the plane blade deeper, trying to force the wood to obey. You push harder. The plane digs in, stalls, and a huge, ugly chunk tears out from the middle of the plank. You stare at it in horror. You have ruined a day's worth of timber. You have created a weakness. Torvald walks over. He looks at the scar in the wood, then at your face, pale with shame. He doesn't shout. He kneels, runs his thumb over the tear. The wood wasn't fighting you, he says, his voice low. It was telling you its story. That's a knot buried there. A hard place. You try to shout over it. You must listen harder. He takes the plane from your trembling hands, adjusts the blade to a whisper, and demonstrates. He works around the hard spot, coaxing the high areas down until the tear becomes a mere dip, then disappears into a new, true plane. It takes him 20 minutes of patient, gentle work. A tool is not a club, he says, handing the plane back. It is a question, and you must be quiet to hear the answer. That lesson sinks deeper than any other. The tool is a question. From then on, you approach each task as a dialogue. The auger and brace, which you learn next, ask the wood for a hole. You must feel the different resistance as the bit passes from soft sapwood to hard heartwood, adjusting your pressure, clearing the chips so it doesn't bind and burn. The slick, the long finishing plane asks for the final, perfect surface. Its song is a soft, continuous whisper, leaving behind a finish like polished stone. You're given your first real responsibility, shaping the tree nails. These are not iron nails which rust and rot the wood, but dowels carved from seasoned, split oak. They're the ship's ligaments. You sit for hours with a draw knife and a rounding plane, turning square pegs of oak into perfect, tapered cylinders. Each one must be uniform, strong, straight. A bad tray nail is a joint waiting to fail. You make hundreds. Your world becomes the rhythm of the blade, the pile of shavings, the growing stack of smooth, deadly serious pegs. Your hands are no longer a boy's hands. They are maps of your education. A pale, shiny scar across your left thumb from a skidding chisel. A permanent stiffness in your right wrist from the planing motion. A patch of skin on your palm that has hardened into a perfect leather pad, shaped to the handle of your draw knife. The dirt is ground into the cracks. The tar stains are permanent. You look at them sometimes by firelight and see not ruin, but a story. The story of grain and resistance and slow, hard-won understanding. You have learned the first true language of the shipwright. You're no longer sweeping. You're speaking to the wood. And sometimes, if you are very quiet and very careful, it speaks back. The Gray Gull is not a ship yet. She is a rumor, a set of lines on parchment in Master Elias's loft, and a mountain of timber on the green. But the day comes when the rumor becomes a promise. The keel timber is ready. It is not merely a log. It is a beast, a 60-foot length of English oak, 3 feet thick at its base, seasoned for 2 years in the brackish river mud to toughen its fibers. It has been hewn square by the sawyers and adzemen. Now it must be placed. This is a ceremony of pure, brutish force. Every able-bodied man and boy in the yard is summoned. Oxen are harnessed. Ropes as thick as your arm are lashed around the timber. Commands are bellowed. The air crackles with a different kind of tension. Not the focused silence of joinery, but the volatile energy of a crowd preparing for a mighty heave. You're given a place on a hauling rope between Garrett the sawyer and a grunting blacksmith's apprentice. Heave on the call and don't let go, lest it roll back and take your legs, Garrett growls. The master of operations is Master Elias himself, standing on a barrel, his rasping voice cutting through the din. Ready yourselves. Take the strain. 100 backs bend. The rope bites into your palms, already hardened but now screaming in protest. The weight is incomprehensible. It is the weight of the forest, the weight of the future ship. Heave! A collective roar. Muscles cord. Feet slip in the mud. The timber groans, shifts an inch, and settles. Again. Heave! Another roar. Another inch. This is not building. This is birth by main force. For an hour, you are part of a single, sweating, straining organism, inching the monstrous backbone of the Gray Gull towards the sloping banks of the stocks. When it finally rolls onto the great oak blocks and is chock secure, a cheer goes up. You collapse on the ground, chest heaving, hands on fire, but thrumming with a strange, primal pride. You have laid a foundation. Now the skeleton can rise. The keel is the spine. Next come the stem and stern post, the jaw and the tail, bolted and fastened with massive iron drifts driven by sledgehammers that ring like bells. You are not yet trusted with such work. You are a fetcher, a holder, a human clamp. You stand for hours in the chill shadow of the rising structure, holding a heavy timber in place while Torvald and the master joiner scribe the lines for the critical scarf joints, angled cuts that lock the pieces together, lengthening the wood beyond any single tree. You learn about deadwood, the solid mass of timber built up at the bow and stern to shape the hull and bear the immense stresses. You see the first frames, the ribs, being assembled on the ground. Each frame is not one piece, but many. The floor timber that sits across the keel, then the futtocks that curve upwards, joined together with complex wooden locks that look like the pieces of an ancient puzzle. Torvald lets you help assemble one, guiding your hands as you drive the first oak tray nail you yourself shaped. The thunk of the mallet driving your peg home, binding two great pieces of oak into a single structural whole, sends a jolt up your arm that is pure, unadulterated power. You have just made a bone for the Leviathan. The day the first frame is raised is another spectacle. Sheer legs, a crude but powerful crane made from two spars, are erected. Ropes and blocks creak under the strain. The frame, a gigantic, crooked wooden U, is lifted into the air, swaying dangerously. Men with long poles guide it, shouting warnings. It is maneuvered over the keel, then lowered. It settles onto the keel with a solid, final crunch. For the first time, the ship has a dimension beyond length. It has shape. It has a chest. You are assigned to the framing crew. Your job is inside the hull, in the half-darkness between the rising ribs. It is a world apart. The noise of the yard becomes muffled, replaced by the close, echoing reports of mallets and the crisp scent of fresh-cut oak. Sunlight slants in through the gaps between frames, casting stark, moving bars of light through the dusty air. You work on your knees, on your back, in cramped spaces where the curvature of the future hull forces you into awkward contortions. You fasten keelsons, internal timbers that reinforce the keel. You fit stringers, horizontal braces that tie the ribs together. You're inside the whale, building its strength from within. Here, in the cathedral of the ribs, you learn the shipwright's superstitions. They are not spoken of lightly. They are observed with the seriousness of physical law. No work is ever begun on a Friday, the day of the crucifixion. To lay a keel or step a mast on a Friday is to invite calamity. A silver coin, a penny, is placed under the mast step, a gift to the spirits of the sea for good luck. You see Master Elias himself do this, his lips moving in a silent invocation. Most potent of all is the silence around naming. The ship has a name on the papers, Grey Gull, but that name is never, ever spoken aloud within the hull while she is being built. She is referred to only as she, or this lady, or the vessel. To speak her true name is to draw the attention of the deep, to make her a target before she is even ready. You hear old sailors turned laborers mutter that the sea is always listening, always hungry for new souls. You scoff inwardly at first, but the ritual is infectious. You find yourself avoiding the words, a chill touching your spine if someone slips. The half-built ship feels like a vulnerable, sleeping creature. Why wake the thing that might devour it? One evening, working late with Torvald to fit a stubborn knee timber, you break the silence with a question that has been gnawing at you. Do you believe it? That the sea hears her name? Torvald pauses, his mallet poised. He looks around the shadowy interior, the ribs rising around them like the arches of a crypt. It's not about belief, lad. he says, his voice a low rumble in the confined space. It's about respect. We're taking trees that grew with their roots in good, honest earth. We are cutting them, bending them, forcing them into a shape meant for another world entirely. A world of salt and storm and endless falling away. We are asking them to do the impossible. It is a violent, arrogant act. He drives the tray nail home with a conclusive thwack. The least we can do is be humble about it. The rituals, they are our humility. Whether the sea hears or not is beside the point. We hear, and we remember we are not gods, just men with mallets. His words settle in you, heavier than any timber. You look at the curving walls of oak, still smelling of the forest, and for the first time, you feel not just pride in the work, but a sense of its profound audacity. You are building a blasphemy against nature, hoping nature will forgive you long enough for it to be useful. The skeleton grows, frame by frame. The gray gull's ribs rise from the keel, curving out and then in again towards the yet-to-be-built deck. The space inside becomes darker, more complex, a labyrinth of wood. You know, every joint, every tray nail, every subtly shaped curve of her inner hull. You have touched every part of her bones. She is no longer the vessel. In the privacy of your mind, she becomes your lady, your secret, your impossible, arrogant prayer, taking shape in oak and silence. The skeleton is complete. The great gull stands fully ribbed, a vast wooden whale beached on the stocks. Now, she must be made whole. The spaces between her plank skin must be killed. This is the work of the caulker, and it is the yard's purgatory. Your education in tools and timber, your quiet conversations with grain, mean nothing here. This is a war of filth and endurance. Master Elias makes the assignments, and his finger, black and inevitable as a judge's gavel, points to you. You are handed over to the caulking gang, a band of men apart, known by their perpetual stoop and the permanent, reeking aura of tar that hangs about them like a shroud. Their foreman is a man called Grime. It is not a nickname, it is a state of being. He is short, broad, with arms thickened by a lifetime of hammering, and eyes permanently squinted against smoke and sun. He looks you over, his expression one of profound disinterest. Another broom boy thinks he can make a seam. He mutters to no one. He thrusts a tool into your hands. It is a caulking iron, a blunt, wedge-shaped piece of steel with a handle. Its twin, a heavy, round-headed caulking mallet, follows. They feel alien deadweight. Your life is now the seam. Grime rasps. He leads you to the hull. The planking is complete, a beautiful, smooth sweep of overlapping oak planks, each one fastened with hundreds of tray nails. But between each plank is a gap, a deliberate channel. This is where you will live. Oakum, he says, kicking the foul-smelling sack. Inside is a dense, sticky mass of picked-apart old rope, saturated with tar. It smells of harbors, bilges, and decay. The process is simple. Brutally, mind-numbingly simple. You sit in a wooden bosun's chair, a sling suspended by ropes, or perch on precarious scaffolding. You take a strand of oakum. You lay it over the seam. You place the sharp edge of your iron against it. Then, with your other hand, you swing the mallet. Talp, 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 tunk. Talp, 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 tunk. You do this for 12 hours a day. The first hour blisters your palm. The second hour makes the blister burst. The third hour grinds the raw flesh against the mallet's handle. You bind your hand with a dirty rag, which quickly soaks through with blood and serum. The pain is a bright, screaming constant. Your wrist, your elbow, your shoulder. Each joint takes its turn to announce a new, exquisite ache. But the physical pain is only the orchestra. The true hell is the tar. A young boy, even younger than you, tends the pitch kettle, a great, black iron pot suspended over a fire. He feeds it lumps of solid pitch, which melt into a viscous, bubbling liquid. The smoke is thick, acrid, and intelligent. It seeks your eyes, no matter which way the wind blows. It coats your throat, leaving a taste like a burnt grave. When a seam is packed with oakum, you call for hot stuff. The boy brings a ladle of the bubbling pitch, his face a mask of soot. You must pour it into the seam without spilling. The heat is intense on your face. Droplets inevitably spit from the kettle or the seam, landing on your hands, your neck, your cheek. They burn with a sticky, clinging agony. You learn not to jerk away. A sudden movement risks a ladleful in your lap. You learn to bear it, to let the tiny, burning brand cool and harden, to be picked off later with a thumbnail, leaving a shiny pink scar. You become a creature of smell. The tar permeates everything. It is in your hair, your clothes, the pores of your skin. You taste it in your watery gruel. You smell it on your own breath. You dream in smells of burning pitch and rot. The other apprentices, the joiners and the sawyers, give you a wide berth. You are unclean. The work is also profoundly, soul-crushingly lonely. The tap-tap-tap thunk is your world. Your vision is narrowed to the few inches of seam before your iron. The magnificent curve of the hull, the grand design you helped frame, means nothing here. You see only a crack to be filled. The artistry is gone, replaced by a primitive, pounding necessity. You're not a shipwright here. You are a plugger of holes, a servant of the gap. Grime is a harsh master, but not an unfair one. He patrols the hull, running a thin, sharp rave iron along the finished seams. If he can hook a strand of oakum and pull it free, you have failed. The seam must be ripped out and done again. No pay for that day. You see a man, a veteran caulker named Silas, break down in tears when grime condemns 20 feet of his work. Silas had been nursing a fever, but came to work anyway. The seams were imperfect. They all came out. He lost 3 days' wages. The lesson is seared into you. The sea is less forgiving than grime. There is no room for sickness, for self-pity, for a single moment of inattention. You learn the different sounds. A solid, ringing thunk means the oakum is seating well against the back of the seam. A dull thud means it's folding in on itself, creating a hidden void, a future leak. You learn to feel the vibration travel up the iron into your hand, a secret language of density and security. Weeks pass in a monotonous haze of pain and stink. But a change occurs, so gradual you hardly notice. The blisters on your hand callous over, forming pads of leathery armor perfectly shaped to the mallet's handle. The ache in your shoulder becomes a permanent, low hum, a part of you like your heartbeat. You no longer notice the tar smell on yourself. It is your smell now. And the tap-tap-tap thunk becomes a kind of meditation. Your mind, starved of stimulation, begins to wander the inner landscapes of memory and imagination. You think of your father's boat. You think of the forest the oak came from. You compose nonsense poems in the rhythm of your strikes. One day, high up near the sheer strake, with the river spread out below you and a cold wind cutting through the tar smoke, you have a revelation. You're not just filling a crack. You are creating a continuous, unbroken skin. This tarred hemp is the vessel's final defense. Behind this seam lies the hollow dark of the hold where men will sleep, where cargo will be stored. On the other side is the infinite, crushing pressure of the sea. Your repetitive, despised labor is the only thing standing between them. Every thunk of your mallet is a bolt being shot against the abyss. The work does not become easier, but it gains meaning. A terrible, weighty meaning. You look at Silas, his eyes hollow, his cough worsening, and you understand his tears were not just for lost wages, but for the terrifying responsibility of a weakness he might have left behind. You finish the Gray Gull's hull. Your last seam is at the waterline near the stern. When you pour the final ladle of pitch and it cools to a glossy black ribbon, you feel not elation, but a profound, bone-deep exhaustion and a sliver of grim satisfaction. You have done your part. The lady has her skin. It is ugly, black, and stinking, but it is whole. Grime inspects your final work. He runs his rave iron along it, his face impassive. He presses, prods, leans his weight against it. He looks at you, gives a single, slow nod, and moves on. It is the highest praise you will ever receive from him. You wash in the river, scrubbing with sand until your skin is raw, but the stain of tar and the ghost of the smell remain. You return to the joiner's crew, your hands now unfit for fine planing, your rhythm still echoing with the caulker's beat. You look at the Gray Gull, now ready for decking, and see her differently. You see the beautiful, smooth planks, but you also see, in your mind's eye, the thousands of feet of black, tarred seams beneath a hidden web of endurance. You know her secret strength, and you know the hell it took to make it. The Gray Gull is no longer a skeleton, nor a rib cage being skinned. She stands complete to the main deck, a creation of stunning, assertive geometry. The hell of caulking is behind you, a black baptism that has left its mark on your hands and in your lungs. Now, you return to the world of joinery, but you are changed. The fine tolerances and sweet smells of plain pine for the decking feel almost frivolous after the brutal pragmatism of pitch and oakum. Your hands, toughened and stiffened by the mallet, struggle with the delicate control needed for a smoothing plane. Torvald notices, assigns you to the heavier work, fitting the massive knightheads that will support the windlass, helping to raise the great capstan onto its spindle. Your strength, earned in the caulking gangs, is now an asset. But as the ship grows more beautiful, a new tension threads through the yard. It is time to give her a soul, and a soul requires a name. The name has always existed, of course, on the contract in Master Elias's loft, in the quiet conversations with the merchant owners who occasionally visit to check on their investment. She is the Gray Gull, a good name, swift, weather-wise, a creature of the harsh coast. But that name has been a secret, a word held behind the teeth. To speak it aloud over the unfinished hull is, in the yard's steadfast belief, to invite the attention of the very elements she must brave. It is to paint a target on her green timbers. Now, with the deck laid and the mast being shaped in the spar shed, the silence can no longer hold. The naming ceremony is set, a ritual that exists in the liminal space between the builders and the sailors, between land and sea. The ship must also be given her eyes. The figurehead is carved by a specialist, a nervous, pale man from the town who works in a shed filled with the ghosts of lions, mermaids, and stern-faced warriors. The Gray Gull's figurehead is the bird itself, carved from a single block of resilient elm, its wings swept back as if in a powerful dive, its beak open in a silent cry. It is a fierce, elegant thing. You are part of the crew that hoists it into place, bolting it securely to the stem just below the bowsprit. As you tighten the last bolt, you look into its painted wooden eye. It seems to gaze past you down the length of the river towards the open sea. It is no longer carving. It is a sentinel. The day before the ceremony, a different kind of man arrives at the yard. Captain Jorvik. He is the first real sailor to impose his presence on the Gray Gull. He is not like the laborers or even the merchants. He moves with the rolling gait of a man used to unstable footing, even on solid land. His face is a topography of weathered seams and squint lines, his beard salted with gray. His eyes are the color of a winter sea, and they miss nothing. He walks the decks not with the reverence of a builder, but with the probing, practical assessment of a tenant. He kicks at deck planks, tests the tension of the standing rigging being fitted, runs his hands along the rails. He speaks to Master Elias, but his words are for the ship. She's stiff in the turn of the bilge, Elias. I'd have liked to touch more flair to the bows for a drier deck in a head sea. This is blasphemy to your ears. You built that turn of the bilge. You caulked those seams. But Master Elias merely nods, engaging in a technical dialogue about load bearing and stability. It is the first time you understand that the ship you have built is, in the end, a tool. Its beauty is incidental. Its function is everything. The realization is a small, quiet sorrow. Captain Jorvik brings his own crew, a handful of rough, loud men who begin to move their gear into the forepeak. They bring the smell of salt, old tobacco, and strange spices. They treat the ship with a casual, proprietary air that feels like a violation. They spit on the decks you planed to a silken finish. They carve initials into the taffrail. One of them, a giant with a parrot on his shoulder, sees you staring as he hammers a hook for his hammock into one of your carefully fitted deck beams. He grins, a flash of gold teeth. Given her character, lad, she's too pretty, needs a few scars to be lucky. You want to protest, to explain the months of toil, the silent prayers driven into the wood with every tray nail. But you say nothing. The ship is passing from your world into his. You are a midwife, and your charge is being taken away by its father. The morning of the naming dawns clear and cold. The yard is transformed. The usual chaos is ordered, swept clean. Bunting, faded and salt-stained from 100 launches, is strung from the stocks. Townspeople, merchants, and officials gather, a splash of color against the gray wood and mud. There's a festive, nervous energy. For them, it is a spectacle. For you and the builders, it is a moment of profound vulnerability. The ceremony begins with a priest, a frail man who looks terrified of the burly shipwrights and sailors. He drones a Latin blessing, swinging a censer that emits a pathetic wisp of incense, utterly overwhelmed by the smells of tar and timber. The words are meaningless to most, but the intent is felt. He is asking God to bless this arrogant wooden construct. Then, the owner's wife steps forward. She is young, draped in a fine blue wool cloak, her face pale with nerves. In her hands is a bottle of good Canary wine, secured to the ship's prow with a red ribbon. The crowd falls silent. This is the moment, the breaking of the silence. She clears her throat, her voice thin at first, then gaining strength as it echoes off the hull. In the name of God, and for the prosperity of her owners and crew, I christen thee. She hesitates for a heartbeat, and in that pause, you feel the collective breath of the yard held tight. Greigul, may God speed all who sail in thee. She swings the bottle. It arcs through the air and smashes against the elm breast of the figurehead with a sharp, wet crack. Wine, like blood, runs down the gray-painted feathers and drips onto the mud below. The crowd erupts in cheers. Hats are thrown. A small band of musicians strikes up a jig. But you are not cheering. You're watching the ship. You half expect a cloud to cross the sun, a sudden gust of ill wind, a groan from the green timbers. Nothing happens. The gray gull sits on her stocks, wet with wine, bunting fluttering from her rails, indifferent to the name now echoing in the air around her. The spell is broken. The secret is out. The sea has heard. A strange, hollow feeling opens in your chest. The protective secrecy is gone. She is named, claimed, public property. The ritual that felt like a sacred defense now feels like a surrender. Captain Jorvik climbs onto a barrel and addresses the crowd, his voice a booming roar that easily quiets the music. He thanks the owners, the shipwrights, the town. He speaks of voyages to come, of valuable cargoes, of the Grey Gull's swiftness and strength. His words are confident, bold. They are the words of a man who deals in outcomes, not processes. He belongs to the world of wind and profit, not the world of grain and glue. As the crowd begins to disperse towards the ale tents, you slip away. You walk to the very front of the stocks, where the great curved bow looms over you. You place your hand on the cold, wine-stained wood, just below the figurehead's fierce eye. Good luck, you whisper, your voice lost in the din. You're not speaking to a ship. You are speaking to the 1,000 fragments of your own labor, the splinters of your youth, the echoes of Torvald's wisdom and Grimes' harsh lessons, all sealed within this form. You are speaking to the silent, sleeping spirit in the oak, now awakened by a name and given to a stranger. You have built her body. You have sealed her skin. You have even helped give her eyes. But her soul, her purpose, her story will now be written by Captain Jorvik, by the wind and by the sea. You turn your back on the celebration and walk towards the spar shed, where the shaping of the next set of masts has already begun. The work continues. It always continues. But a part of you remains there, hand on the hull, whispering a futile blessing into the indifferent wood. The ceremony of naming was a baptism. The launch is a birth. And like any birth, it is awaited with a terrible mixture of hope, fear, and the certainty of irrevocable change. In the days following the naming, the Grey Gull is subjected to a final, frantic flurry of completion. You are part of it, but your labor now feels detached, dreamlike. You help fit the last sections of the bulwarks, install the ornate taffrail carvings, paint the scrollwork on her quarter galleries of brilliant white and gold. She is being dressed for her presentation to the world, her working-class oak bones hidden beneath a gentleman's finery. It feels like putting a lace collar on a wolf. The technical preparations are somber, meticulous. The launching ways are laid with a precision that rivals the joining of a keel. 2 parallel tracks of massive, greased timbers are anchored to the slope leading from the stocks to deep water. The ship's cradle, the structure that has held her these many months, is now modified to slide upon them. The grease is a foul mixture of tallow from 100 slaughtered sheep and soft soap, steaming in great cauldrons before being slathered on with broad brushes. The smell of burning fat mixes with the yard's perpetual odors, creating a nauseating perfume of celebration and sacrifice. The most critical elements are the dog shores. These are the 2 great wooden brackets, like the triggers of a colossal crossbow, that hold the entire weight of the ship back against the slope. They're the only things preventing gravity from claiming its due. Their placement and integrity are checked and rechecked by Master Elias and Captain Jorvik together, a rare moment of unity between the landmaker and the sea taker. The fate of the ship rests on these 2 blocks of oak. The night before the launch, no one sleeps. The yard is alive with a low, anxious hum. Men check and recheck their work by lantern light. Torvald makes a final, slow walk around the entire hull, his hand trailing over the planking as if reading Braille, his face unreadable. You find yourself drawn to the ship, climbing the scaffolding one last time. You sit on the forecastle, your legs dangling over the side, looking at the dark, restless river. The Grey Gull is a vast, sleeping shadow beneath you. You can feel the latent power in her, the tremendous weight held in check, yearning for its element. You remember Grimes' lesson. You are all just men with mallets, engaged in an arrogant act. Tomorrow, your arrogance will be tested by physics. Dawn comes pallid and slow. The yard is already crowded. It seems the entire town and half the countryside has come. Hawkers sell meat pies and ale. Children dart through the forest of adult legs. The gentry have viewing stands draped in cloth. It is a carnival, but for you and the shipwrights, it is a vigil. You stand with your crew, a silent island in the colorful, chattering sea. You wear your least tarred shirt, but you still smell of the yard. You belong to the ship, not the crowd. Master Elias, looking older than you have ever seen him, moves to the base of the stocks where the dog shores stand. He is flanked by 2 axemen, their blades sharpened to a wicked gleam. Captain Jorvik stands nearby, his jaw clenched, his sea captain's confidence replaced by a taut, focused intensity. He is about to receive his kingdom. A hush, fragile and incomplete, trickles through the crowd. The priest says a brief, hurried prayer, his eyes on the ship as if expecting divine wrath. The owner's wife, who named the ship, is not present for this. This is not a woman's business. This is the act of men unleashing a power they have created. Master Elias raises a hand. The yard falls utterly silent. The only sounds are the cry of a distant gull and the liquid whisper of the river. You can hear your own heart hammering against your ribs. This is it, the moment of letting go. Elias's rasping voice cuts the silence, not loud, but carrying to every ear. Cut away. The axemen's arms rise in unison, a beautiful, terrible symmetry. They seem to hang at the apex for an eternity. Then they fall. Crack, crack. 2 sharp, simultaneous reports, like the breaking of the world's backbone. The dog shores explode into splinters. For 1, 2, 3 heartbeats, nothing happens. The gray gull sits, immobile, a statue. A murmur of confusion ripples through the crowd. Has it failed? Is she stuck? The arrogance punished? Then a sound begins. A deep, internal groan emanating from the very heart of the hull. It is the sound of 10,000 oak fibers accepting a new truth. It is the sound of the forest finally surrendering to gravity. It starts low, then rises in pitch and volume, a moan of protest that becomes a roar of release. The ship shudders, not a small tremble, but a great, visceral convulsion that runs from stem to stern. And then, with a terrifying, slow majesty, she begins to move. At first, it is barely perceptible, an inch, another inch. The grease on the ways lets out a low, sighing squeal. Then, as the immense weight overcomes inertia, the movement becomes a smooth, accelerating slide. The sound changes from a groan to a deep, rolling thunder as her cradle passes over the timbers, a noise so profound you feel it in your teeth. She is moving now, in truth, a mountain of wood in graceful, inevitable motion down the slope. The crowd's noise, a collective gasp that swells into a roar, is drowned out by the ship's own thunder. You cannot cheer. You can only watch, your throat tight, your eyes fixed on her lines. Is she true? Will she falter? Her bow reaches the water. It kisses the surface, then pushes into it, sending a smooth wave rippling outwards. More of her length enters, and the river rises to meet her. Now her full weight is transferring from land to water. This is the moment of truth. Her stern lifts from the cradle as the bow digs in. For a heart-stopping second, she seems to pivot, to hesitate on the brink of a plunge. Then, with a final, crashing, triumphant Kiyar smash that sends a wall of white water and spray 30 feet into the air, her entire afterbody enters the river. She vanishes. Her stern disappears completely in a boil of foam and muddy water. The wave she created rolls up the bank, soaking the feet of the front row of spectators. A woman screams. Men shout. The rolling thunder of the slide is replaced by a dreadful, silent roiling of water. You have stopped breathing. Then, As if rejecting the very idea of defeat, the gray gull surges back upwards. Her stern breaks the surface, shedding water in great cascades. She bobs, violently at first, then more gently. She rocks from side to side, testing her new medium. And then she settles. She floats. She rides high and proud on the river's breast. A creature suddenly, perfectly in its element. The water that moments ago sought to swallow her now cradles her with a natural, easy grace. The explosion of sound from the crowd is physical, a wave of relief and joy that hits you like a gale. Hats, flowers, caps fill the air. The band, which had fallen silent in terror, strikes up a raucous, victorious tune. But you are looking at the ship. Your eyes are tracing her waterline. Is she listing? Is she down by the head? You search for any sign of failure, of the hidden flaw, the bad seam, the cursed timber. There is none. She floats perfectly, evenly, as if she had always been there. The fear that has been a cold stone in your gut for months melts away, replaced by a warmth so intense it brings a sudden, shocking sting to your eyes. You blink rapidly, looking down at your boots. A heavy hand clamps your shoulder. It is Torvald. You look up. The old man's face is streaked with clean tracks through the grime, his eyes red-rimmed. He doesn't smile. His grip tightens until it hurts, and he gives you one firm, slow shake, a communicant's acknowledgement of a shared miracle. No words are needed. Then he turns and walks away, head down, into the cheering crowd. The launch is over. The gray gull is alive. She is tugged to the outfitting dock, where for the next month she will receive her masts, her sails, her soul. The crowd disperses, buzzing with the spectacle, already turning to the ale and the dancing. You stand on the empty, scarred bank where the stocks stand, now just a meaningless wooden skeleton. The grease on the ways looks like a grotesque smile. The splinters of the dock shores are scattered like battlefield casualties. The place where your lady grew is now just a muddy hole. You feel hollowed out. A piece of you has slid down those ways with her. The daily purpose of years is gone. The quiet, secret communion with her bones is ended. You are left with the memory of her groan, the sight of her plunge, the breathtaking beauty of her float, and the silence. You look from the empty berth to the river, where the gray gull, now surrounded by busy lighters and swarming sailors, sits with a strange new dignity. She's no longer yours. You have let her go. The work is done, and for the first time, you understand the true cost of building something. Not the sweat, nor the pain, nor the years, but the profound, necessary emptiness that comes after the creation is complete. You turn your back on the water. There's a new keeled timber, a Norway oak, waiting on the green. Master Elias is already there, talking to the sawyers. The work continues. It always continues. The emptiness after a launch is not a quiet thing. It is a roaring silence. The gray gull is gone, a phantom limb that still aches. For days, you find yourself looking towards her stocks, expecting to see the familiar curve of her hull against the sky, and feeling a small lurch in your stomach when you see only open river and sky. The yard goes on, of course. It is a beast that must be fed, and its hunger is for timber and labor. But the heart of it, the collective focus that had been the gull, has scattered. You are reassigned. No longer part of a dedicated crew on a single ship, you become a rover, a filler of gaps. You spend a week with the sawyers, helping to roll a massive Baltic pine log into the pit. The work is simple, brutish in your mind, accustomed to the complex puzzles of joinery and the meditative hell of caulking, wanders. You think of the gull's deck beams, which came from a log just like this one. You wonder where she is now, if her masts are stepped, if her sails are bent on, if Captain Jorvik is barking orders across those decks you planed. You spend another week in the loft with Master Elias, who is laying out the lines for the next vessel, a smaller, stouter coastal trader called the Heron. He lets you hold the battens, the flexible strips of wood used to draw the sweeping curves of the hull on the vast, chalk-coated floor. As you pin the batten to specific points called stations, you realize you are helping to dictate the very soul of the next ship. The responsibility is terrifying and exhilarating. Elias speaks as he works, his raspy voice a monologue on dead rise, tumble home, and bearing. You listen, and some of it sticks, not the complex theory, but the feel of a good line. A line that looks right will be right. It is an intuition you are starting to develop. One afternoon, you are sent to the stores to fetch a specific type of fir for a batch of tray nails. As you pass the finished lumber stacks, you see a boy, no more than 10, desperately trying to control a broom twice his height, fighting a losing battle against a mountain of oak shavings. His face is smeared with dust and frustration. You stop. You see yourself, the ghost of the yard, overwhelmed and invisible. Without a word, you take the broom from his hands. He stares up at you, eyes wide with fear of reprimand. You don't speak. You demonstrate the pendulum swing, the use of the body's weight, the way to corral the dust into a manageable pile. You do it for 5 minutes, then hand the broom back. The boy takes it, his movements now a clumsy imitation of yours, but with a hint of understanding. He gives you a tiny, grateful nod before returning to his war. You walk on, a strange feeling in your chest. You're no longer the boy. You're the man who knows how to sweep. The progression is as inevitable and humbling as the tide. Your first real wage comes. It is a handful of copper pennies and a single, small silver coin. The weight of it in your palm feels alien. It is not compensation for the years, for the blisters, for the piece of your soul that sailed with the gull. It is a transaction. You have been measured and found to be worth this much metal. You spend most of it immediately on 2 things: a sturdy leather apron to replace your tattered one, and a fine whetstone to keep your tools sharp. It is an investment in your own utility. The remaining pennies you save, wrapped in a scrap of oiled cloth. They are a seed of a future you cannot yet imagine. The Heron's keel is laid. The ceremony is smaller, the timber less imposing. You work on her, but it is different. You are not discovering the art alongside her growth. You are applying a skill you now possess. You shape futtocks with confident strokes of the adze. You drill clean, true holes for tray nails without a second thought. You are competent. The older men give you less instruction, only correction. The transformation is complete. You are a journeyman shipwright. Yet, the ghost of the gray gull haunts you. One evening, as you are leaving the yard, you hear a commotion at the outfitting wharf. A ship has come in, her sails furled, being towed by barges. She is weathered, her paint faded, her hull streaked with salt, but you know her lines. Your heart seizes. It is the gull. She is back from her maiden voyage, a run to Bordeaux for wine. You run to the wharf, pushing through the crowd of stevedores and sailors. You see Captain Jorvik on the quarterdeck, his face harder, more satisfied. You see scars on her hull, a long, raw scrape along her starboard side, a patched section of planking near the waterline. She has been tested. As the crew bustles, you approach the hull like a pilgrim. You ignore the sailors, your eyes scanning the wood. You find the patched section. The repair is competent, but it is a foreign graft on her skin. You run your fingers over the caulking around it. It is good work. The emptiness after a launch is not a quiet thing. It is a roaring silence. The gray gull is gone, a phantom limb that still aches. For days, you find yourself looking towards her stocks, expecting to see the familiar curve of her hull against the sky, and feeling a small lurch in your stomach. when you see only open river and sky. The yard goes on, of course. It is a beast that must be fed, and its hunger is for timber and labor. But the heart of it, the collective focus that had been the gull, has scattered. You are reassigned. No longer part of a dedicated crew on a single ship. You become a rover, a filler of gaps. You spend a week with the Sawyers, helping to roll a massive Baltic pine log into the pit. The work is simple, brutish in your mind, accustomed to the complex puzzles of joinery and the meditative hell of caulking, wanders. You think of the gull's deck beams, which came from a log just like this one. You wonder where she is now, if her masts are stepped, if her sails are bent on, if Captain Jorvik is barking orders across those decks you planed. You spend another week in the loft with Master Elias, who is laying out the lines for the next vessel, a smaller, stouter coastal trader called the Heron. He lets you hold the battens, the flexible strips of wood used to draw the sweeping curves of the hull on the vast, chalk-coated floor. As you pin the batten to specific points called stations, you realize you are helping to dictate the very soul of the next ship. The responsibility is terrifying. Time in a shipyard is not a line. It is a spiral, turning back on itself with each new keel laid. Seasons are marked by the type of work. The felling of oaks in winter, the bending of planks in spring's damp heat, the frantic pushes to launch before the autumn gales. Years are marked not by dates, but by the ships that leave your hands. The Heron is launched, then the Swift, then the merchantman Dawn Chaser. You work on warships during the King's mobilizations, their hulls thicker, their demands more brutal, their purpose a dark shadow over the yard. You see boys become men, men become old, and old men vanish, replaced by new, hungry faces smeared with sawdust. You watch Master Elias pass one winter, his great heart finally stilled by the cold he had fought for 60 years. The yard passes to his cautious son, and the work becomes more about ledger books than about listening to timber. You mourn not just the man, but an era. You become Torvald, not a name, but an essence. Your back acquires a permanent stoop from decades of leaning into hulls. Your hands, once mapped with fresh scars, become a landscape of polished calluses. The tar stains bleach pale by sun and salt, but never fully gone. Young men are assigned to you. You teach them to sweep. You show them the draw knife, the quiet question of the plane. You watch them make the same mistakes, endure the same frustrations, and you offer not pity, but the same sparing, grunted corrections you once received. You see the spark of understanding in their eyes, and it is your only reward. You take a wife, the sensible daughter of a river pilot. She does not understand the yard, but she understands duty and patching clothes and making a single salted herring feed two people. You have children, a son who loves books and becomes a clerk, disappointing and relieving you in equal measure. A daughter with your watchful eyes, who marries a cooper. Your life becomes a second creation, built not of oak, but of quiet routines, small warmth, and the profound fatigue of a body that has given its best strength to the timber. Ships return. The gray gull comes back again and again, each time more battered, more repaired, more herself. You learn to recognize the gait of her captains as they come ashore. Jorvik retires, replaced by a younger, fiercer man. 1 year, she does not return. The news comes months later, whispered in the tavern, lost with all hands in a storm off the Hebrides. You sit through the night by your hearth, seeing in the flames the curve of her stem, the chip in her planking that was your fault and your signature. You raise a cup of port ale to the dark window, a toast to the lady who took your youth and your mark into the deep. You feel the loss not as a sailor would, but as a father whose child has preceded him in death. You build your last ship. Your hands are too stiff now for fine joinery, your eyes too weak to trace a perfect line in the dim loft. You serve as an overseer, a repository of hard-won wisdom. You stand on the deck of the newly launched vessel, a sleek packet ship named the Messenger, and feel not the fierce pride of your youth, but a deeper, weirder emotion, a sense of continuity. You're a link in a chain. You took the knowledge from Torvald and Elias, and you have passed it, along with your own scars, to the next generation. The ship is theirs now. Its victories and failures will be theirs to own. On the last day, you are strong enough to walk to the yard. You do not go to the new builds. You walk to the back of the stores, to the break, the quiet, cluttered shore where old, broken things are left to rot. Here lie the ghosts, a shattered capstan, a splintered mast from a long-forgotten wreck, the bleached ribs of a fishing boat. And there, half sunk in the mud, you see it, a fragment of a hull, its curves unmistakable. It is a piece of the Grey Gull's stern, salvaged God knows when from some repair. The wood is gray, soft with rot, the traynails sticking out like iron teeth. You kneel beside it, your old bones protesting. You run your fingers over the rotten wood. You cannot feel the grain anymore, but you remember it. You remember the boy who caulked this seam, who dreamed of glory, who feared the sea's hearing. You were that boy. You are this old man. The distance between them is the length of a lifetime, measured in ships. You do not see grandeur. You see the plain truth. You were not a hero. You were a craftsman. You did not tame the sea. You built tiny, wooden defiances against it, knowing most would fail in time. Your legacy is not in songs, but in silence. It is in the thousands of nights where sailors, in hammocks slung from beams you fitted, slept soundly in a storm. It is in the cargoes of grain that fed cities, the letters that crossed oceans, the children who were born in the new world because a hull you helped make held fast. You were a single, tight strand in the immense, endless rope of human endeavor. You pulled your weight. The rope held. You rise with effort and turn your back on the broken timber. You look once more at the active yard, at the noise and the mud and the young men heaving on ropes. The spiral turns. A new keel is waiting. You walk home slowly, the river on your left, the sigh of the distant sea a constant in your ears. You are tired. You have built well. And the work, the beautiful, brutal, eternal work will go on without you.